Let's start with you, Mr. Jett.
Good morning, Your Honor. Jason Jett, Hayes County District Attorney's Office for the department.
Mr. McCormack.
Cliff McCormack, attorney for the mother.
Ms. Meredith.
I'm Dawn Meredith for alleged respondent father Nastario Robelda, and he is not here, Judge. The email address that he gave me was no good. I've been calling him. He's not answering his phone.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Mr. Manuel.
Zach Manuel, attorney ad litem for the child.
Ms. Rivera.
I'm the mother of Evelyn Rivera.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
Megan Payne, investigator for the department.
Ms. Hankins.
CASA supervisor.
Ms. Blackman.
Tracy Blackman, guardian ad litem.
And if you're not going to
CASA volunteer. We're out of practice.
Okay, so let's see. Ms. Meredith said something earlier that I want to clarify. Ms. Rivera, is Mr. Robledo on Yasmin's birth certificate?
No, ma'am.
And are you married to Mr. Robledo?
No.
And the child is just about a month old, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'll change that in my system to alleged father.
He did come to court briefly for our previous hearing and to ask for a DNA test, but nobody can reach him. You ordered it, but nobody can reach him to have it done.
Okay. Wonder where Ms. Payne went. She just dropped off. Mr. Jett, have you all conferred, and are there any agreements?
I don't have any agreements. No, Your Honor. My understanding, we can chat again if Mr. McCormack would like, or if you can indicate that we might be able to get somewhere. But I don't. My last indication was from that we weren't anywhere near an agreement.
Okay, and he's shaking his head negatively. Is that correct, Mr. McCormack? You're not in agreement?
No.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Jett, would you call your first witness, please?
We
Yes.
would invoke the rule, by the way. I don't know if that was done, but we would have.
Okay. Who is your department's rep, Mr. Jett?
That's going to be Ms. Payne.
Okay.
And I don't intend on calling Ms. Noyes.
Okay.
And then everybody else that was here has already been sent out of the room.
Okay. And does anyone expect to call the current placement as a witness?
I do not.
No.
Okay, so she's observing, Ms. Noyes is observing because if it becomes a TMC case, she'll be the caseworker. That's the only reason she's observing, Mr. McCormack. And then Ms. Wiederstein is observing as the department's, or as Mr. Jett's legal assistant. So and then we have a couple of folks in the waiting room. And okay, who's your first witness, Mr. Jett?
Judge, I think I'd like to call Ms. Payne.
Okay, Ms. Payne.
Ms. Payne, how are you employed?
I work for the Department of Protective Services.
Okay. And are you familiar with this case that we're in court about today?
Yes, I am.
How are you familiar?
I previously worked the last investigation as well.
Okay. And are you the investigator assigned to this case?
Yes, I am.
Okay. We're here to ask the court for removal, to continue the removal of this child and for temporary managing conservatorship and enter into a case here. In a nutshell, can you please tell the court why it is we're asking for temporary managing conservatorship of this child?
The department is concerned due to Mrs. Rivera's mental illness and her ability to provide care for her child, as her first child was already removed and she does not have any unsupervised access to that child.
Okay. Were her rights to that previous child terminated?
No, they were not.
Okay. Were her rights limited?
I believe she has PC rights.
Okay.
And so,
By PC rights, you mean possessory conservator?
correct.
Okay. And you previously stated that she can't be around that child unsupervised.
Judge, I'm going to object to this line of questioning. It's not relevant. We're talking about some other
Judge, it's
child.
absolutely relevant. It talks about why we didn't return her child to her before, and it just happened. This is not 5 years ago. This is right now.
Okay, well, make that clear in the testimony if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am. When did the
Your objections overruled, Mr. McCormack.
Ms. Payne, when did the last case resolve?
I do not recall when the last case resolved, but it was prior to this new intake that was received.
Was Ms. Rivera pregnant with this child when that case resolved?
Yes, she was.
Okay. And was it with just within a month or so of case number 1 resolving when child number 2 was born?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we're not talking about something that happened 5 years ago where her rights were limited. We're talking about something that's very recent. Is that correct?
Objection to the leading nature of these questions.
Sustained, don't lead your witness.
Was the prior situation recent or a long time ago?
It was just recently.
Have the issues that were in the case with the first child, Mateo, been resolved
Not to my knowledge.
now? Okay, all right. Are you familiar what Ms. Rivera's psychiatric diagnosis is?
Objection, that would be hearsay and be a medical conclusion. We object.
Judge, she's an investigator. This is part of her job to determine what it is, the reason why somebody can't have their children. And while it might ordinarily be hearsay, she is required by law to gather this information.
I understand that, but it's still going to be hearsay unless you have another exception to hearsay.
Well, I'll ask her in a minute. Well, actually, I just asked her right now if she knew what it was. I didn't ask her what it was, and then we'll determine how she knows it.
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Payne, do you know what Ms. Rivera's diagnosis is?
Yes, I believe she's diagnosed with
Okay,
schizophrenia.
all right. Stop there. Stop there for me.
Objection,
Stop there
that's
for me.
non-responsive.
Sustained.
Okay. Ms. Payne, listen to my question. Do you know what the diagnosis is? Yes or no, please?
Yes.
Okay. Did Ms. Rivera tell you what her diagnosis was?
Yes.
Okay. What did Ms. Rivera tell you her mental health diagnosis was?
Schizophrenia.
Did you discuss her treatment of the schizophrenia with her?
Yes, I have.
What did she tell you about her treatment for the schizophrenia?
That she
And
is
let's limit that to, let's start with the past 6 months.
that she is engaged in services through Shive Mental Health.
Okay. Did she tell you if she's taking medication?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Did she tell you how long she had been current on her medication?
No, she did not.
Okay. Did you talk with Ms. Rivera about any support system she has?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What is her support system?
Her support system was her mother and brother and father
Where does her mother live?
in San Marcos.
Is she an appropriate person to have placement of this child?
Objection,
No.
calls for a lack of foundation to make that conclusion unless there's additional facts to establish that she can make that.
I'm overruling your objection. When you said, is she an appropriate placement? Who are you referring to, Mr. Jett? Because you just mentioned something about her parents.
Well, I was asking about the mother.
Ms. Rivera.
The grandmother.
Okay,
Ms. Rivera's mother.
let's make that clear. Okay.
Is Ms. Rivera's mother an appropriate placement for this child?
No, she is not.
Why?
She does not have stability as far as a stable home. She works at a hotel and sometimes stays there. And she also has history with the department and is aware of the domestic violence between Ms. Rivera and Mr. Robledo.
You mentioned that Ms. Rivera has a brother. Where does he live?
I do not recall where he lives.
Did the department investigate as to whether he was an appropriate placement for this child?
She did not provide him as a placement option.
Did she tell you in what way he would be a support to her?
I do not recall.
You mentioned Ms. Rivera's father. Where does he live?
I do not recall where he stays.
Okay. Did she list him as an option for placement of this child?
No, she did not.
Do you know in what way he would be part of a support system for her?
No, I do not.
So despite listing these 3 people as a support system, does the department find this to be a reliable support system?
No, we do not.
Does Ms. Rivera need a support system?
Yes, she does.
Why does she need a support system?
She requires assistance when providing care for her children. She also does not have transportation for herself and the ability to get things that she needs, such as baby items or things for her home.
Where does Ms. Rivera live currently?
In San Marcos,
Who does she live with?
from my understanding, by herself.
Does she work?
No,
How does she support herself?
she receives government assistance.
And do you know what government assistance she receives?
Objection, that'd be hearsay unless she got it from my client.
Tell us where you got it from, Ms. Payne.
I spoke to Miss Rivera about it.
Overruled.
What government
Okay.
assistance does Ms. Rivera receive, please?
I believe she receives SSI.
Did you talk to her about WIC?
Yes, we did talk about WIC.
Does she receive WIC?
She does not.
Did she know what WIC was?
Yes, she did.
Did she know how to apply for WIC?
I don't recall if she knew how to apply.
Did you discuss that with her about applying for WIC?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what did she tell you?
That she had not signed up at this time.
Did she seem interested?
Yes, she did.
But to your knowledge, at this time, she still hasn't signed up for WIC.
Not to my knowledge.
Concerning Mr. Robledo, when was the last time you had contact with him?
It's been probably since the last investigation.
Was there domestic violence between Ms. Rivera and Mr. Robledo?
Yes, there was.
Okay. And is that one of the things that was that gives the department concerns in this case as well?
Yes, it is.
There's been some discussion that some fictive kin members might be able to help Miss Rivera. Have you heard those discussions?
No, I have not.
Is Ms. Rivera capable of caring for this child in this case?
Objection. Calls for a legal conclusion, and she doesn't have personal knowledge, the ability to make that kind of opinion.
I sustain the objection.
I'll pass the witness for now.
Mr. McCormick?
Yeah, it's just a few questions. Ms. Payne, when you indicated that Ms. Rivera told you that she was receiving treatment at Shive, did you inquire as to what medication she was taking?
Yes, I did.
Okay, did she tell you?
I believe she did. Yes, I believe I got that.
Do you have the names of those medications?
I do not have the names of the medication.
Okay. And isn't it true you didn't contact Shive to verify any of that, did you, before the removal?
I did not.
In fact, you didn't contact Shive at all before the removal to determine what kind of mental health she was receiving, even though you knew that she had received treatment there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you didn't have any kind of knowledge of the relationship that my client was having with the father at the time of the removal, correct?
I did ask her about her relationship with Mr. Robledo.
Before or after the removal?
Before.
Okay. And did she indicate what that relationship was?
She indicated that they were not currently in a relationship. However, she would like to presume a relationship with him.
Okay. So you don't know what the extent of that relationship is right now, correct?
No, I do not.
And one moment. Did she indicate to you that she was going to file a protective order?
She did not.
Are you aware that a protective order has been filed in this case?
No, I was not.
Your attorney didn't inform you of that?
I'm going to object to anything as to what her attorney told her or didn't turn her as attorney-client privilege.
I'll sustain that.
Would that be important to you that if she had filed a protective order to show that she's being protected, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So do you know who Melina Torres is?
Yes, I do.
That's where the other child is placed, correct?
Correct.
And so my client never informed you that she was a support system for this child, the child current of this case, correct?
She did not.
Did you ever ask her if she was involved?
I actually reached out to Miss Torres myself.
Okay. But my client never indicated that she was a support system.
No, she did not.
And how many times did you talk to my client?
I talked to her prior to the removal.
Okay, so one time?
Correct.
And where was that at?
At the hospital.
Okay, so the child was removed from the hospital before she even got home, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Were you aware that she has already set up all of the appropriate baby equipment for the child? Did she ever tell you that?
Yes, she did.
Okay. She has a crib. She has everything that a child has, including formula, correct?
Correct.
But despite all that, you still did not think you thought that the only solution in this case was to do a removal and place the child in the department's care, correct?
I'm going to object, Your Honors, to argumentative.
Overruled.
That's correct.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Just briefly, Ms. Payne, did Ms. Rivera tell you who the father was of this child?
Yes, she stated that it was Mr. Robledo.
And how long has it been, if you know, since they were in a relationship?
I believe from what I had read in documentation is that they have been in an on and off relationship.
And what is your basis for your view that there's domestic violence? Is that from either of the parents?
It's from previous investigations as well as Miss Rivera's. She did advise that there was domestic violence in the relationship with Mr. Robledo.
But she also told you she wants to resume a relationship with him?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Pass the witness.
Mr. Manuel?
Thank you, Judge. Okay, Ms. Payne, first of all, what are the concerns that the department has for Mr. Robledo?
The domestic violence. There were also concerns previously for drug use.
Okay, and in the last case, to your knowledge, did he alleviate any of those concerns?
No, he did not.
Are you aware whether or not he did any of his services in the last case?
He did not complete his services.
Okay. And would it sound correct to you that if this removal was filed the same day that last case was closed, does that sound accurate to you?
It does.
Okay. Are you aware if Ms. Rivera is still currently in contact with Mr. Robledo?
I am not aware.
Is the fact that she has admitted to domestic violence with Mr. Robledo and that she still wants to be in a relationship with him, is that a concern for the department?
Yes, it is.
And are you aware whether or not, I mean, you said he didn't do any services, but do you know if they've done anything in regard to that domestic violence between the two of them?
I do
Have
not.
they gone to couples counseling, anything?
Oh, no, they have not.
Okay. Why have you not had any contact with Mr. Robledo in this investigation?
I have attempted to contact him. He does change his number frequently and also has some pretty erratic behaviors when contacted. I did reach out to his previous attorney, Victoria Brown.
Okay. Do you know whether or not he was incarcerated?
Yes, I believe he was incarcerated when I initially reached out.
Okay. Do you know what that was for?
I do not.
Okay. No further questions.
Anyone else have anything else for Ms. Payne?
No.
Who's your next witness, Mr. Jett?
Yes, I'd like to call Rebecca Falke, Your Honor. Ms. Falke, how are you employed?
I am the social worker at Christus Santa Rosa Hospital here in San Marcos, Texas.
How long have you been employed there?
I have been here since 2019.
Okay. And where did you work before that?
I worked for the local mental health authority
Okay. And how long did you work for them?
since 2012.
And what was your capacity there?
At the local mental health authority,
Yes, ma'am.
I worked with children and adults, different levels of care that had mental illnesses.
Okay. And did you have what was your employment prior to the LHMA?
Prior to that, I had just graduated college. I was fresh
Okay.
out of college. Mhm.
Okay. And was that with a bachelor's degree or master's degree?
That was with my bachelor's degree.
Okay. And what's your bachelor's degree in, please?
My bachelor's degree is in basically special education.
Okay. And do you hold a master's degree as well?
I do.
And what is that master's degree in?
My master's degree is in social work.
Okay. And are you licensed in some way by the state of Texas?
I am. I'm a licensed master social worker.
And what is required to become a licensed master social worker?
So you have to obtain a graduate degree, and then you have to do 3,000 hours, clinical hours, under the supervision of an already licensed social worker. And then from there, you sit for a state exam.
Okay. And how long have you been licensed as a master social worker?
Since 2018.
And do you have experience working with, and I think you've already answered this, but I ask it again. Do you have experience working with individuals with mental health issues?
Yes, that's been kind of my niche since 2012.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to offer Ms. Falke as an expert as a social worker in mental health.
Any objections? Okay, I don't hear any objections. She'll be considered an expert in mental health issues.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Falke, do you know Ms. Rivera in this case, Ms. Evelyn Rivera?
Yes, I've had 2 separate encounters with her.
Okay. What can you tell us about the second encounter with Ms. Rivera?
So I had received a social service consult from our physician here at the hospital. They had some concerns because Ms. Rivera had indicated that her first child had been removed from her care. Per her own report, she said it was for neglect. And so I was basically consulted by our physician.
Okay. And what did you find when you encountered Ms. Rivera?
Upon entering the room with Ms. Rivera, she was standing at the edge of her bed with baby in her arms. She was disheveled, but I didn't really think too much of that because she'd just given birth. But her belly was hanging out. She was, kind of pacing side to side, back and forth. Seemed to be caring for the baby. She had the baby up against her breasts. And so she was, rocking with the baby and answered most of my questions appropriately.
Okay. Is there something about that gave you concern?
So I think what gave me concerns is when I was asking her our specific assessment questions, such as, is father or baby involved? Do you have any support with family, friends, anything like that? Do you have everything prepared for newborn? And there were some things that she had not had prepared. And so that was kind of a little bit of a red flag for me.
What things didn't she have prepared?
So she does not have a support system is what she told me. She wasn't sure if father or baby was going to be involved or not. She didn't have a car seat. When I asked her why she didn't have a car seat, she says, well, I don't drive, so I didn't think I needed one. So just little things like that.
Okay. All right. Did you discuss with her anything about public assistance?
I did. I asked her if she was receiving any kind of benefits or such as WIC, food stamps, Social Security, disability, anything like that.
Okay. What did she tell you?
She said Social Security, yes, and then WIC and food stamps, no.
Okay. Did you discuss with her that she might qualify for those things?
I did. I told her it might be helpful for her too, especially if she was going to be combo feeding, which was breast and bottle feeding.
Okay. And what was her response to that?
That she would follow up.
Okay. Did you tell her how to do that?
Not in, I told her about the local office and how to go about doing that way, but I believe some of those can also be done online, but I didn't give her like in detail that information.
Okay. Now, you had said that you had another encounter with Miss Rivera previously.
Yes.
When was that? When was that?
That was in January of 2022.
Okay. So just about a year prior to the second encounter.
Yes, sir.
And how did you encounter her the first time?
I encountered her because I was requested to do a psychosocial assessment on her in our emergency room department because she was in a mental health crisis.
Okay. Do you recall if she was there by herself?
She was.
Okay. Do you know how she got there?
I want to say she was brought in by an emergency detention order from one of the San Marcos Police Department mental health officers.
And what do you recall about your interaction with her that day?
She was very disheveled. She was having both command and auditory hallucinations. Command hallucinations meaning these auditory hallucinations were telling her to do things or act on things in order to hurt herself. She was also extremely paranoid. So we actually asked that she not have visitors due to her level of decompensation from a mental health standpoint.
Okay. Was she admitted to your hospital?
No, she was, so we don't have inpatient psychiatric services here. So we were able to, and at that time she was actually diagnosed with the flu, and some local places won't take that as far as inpatient psych. So I believe that we transferred her to a facility up in Waco.
Okay. And do you have any information as to how long she was there at that facility?
I do not.
Did you notice any of the same concerns in your second interaction with Ms. Rivera as you did in your first interaction with her?
The only similarity I would say is that she was pacing quite a bit. She did seem anxious during our assessment, but she did seem much improved from my first encounter with her.
Would you have any way to determine from your interaction and from your experience whether Ms. Rivera seemed capable of caring for the child that she just given birth to?
Objection. She doesn't have the foundation to make that kind of opinion.
Judge, she's an expert.
I'm going to allow it.
I would say, due to my last experience with her and current experience, she has made vast improvement. I think if she had proper supports in place, that she could, if she had a good support system and she continued to follow up on an outpatient basis with her mental health providers and continues to do that. Part of the issue with her my last encounter with her back in January of 2022 was because she had not been to her physician, her psychiatrist, in 2 months because she thought she was feeling better. So she stopped all her injections and everything.
Okay. Do you know what medications Ms. Rivera was taking prior to the birth of this child?
I am not aware. I do know the medication that she was on in 2022, which was an injection.
Okay. All right. While you were while Ms. Rivera was in the hospital, were there some safety concerns going on at the hospital concerning Ms. Rivera and the child?
There was an incident and I was made aware. Usually once CPS is called by myself and they get involved, I don't usually have any more interaction with the patient or the mother of the baby, father of baby, or anything like that. But there was a hospital notification that father.
Objection. That's going to be hearsay. I think unless she has personal knowledge, we object.
Ms. Falke, was there a time where you were concerned about your safety with this and concerning this case?
No.
Without telling us what they said, were there security concerns surrounding this case?
Yes.
Okay. And did they concern the father?
Yes.
I believe that's all I have for now. And I would like to pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. McCormick?
There's a few questions, Ms. Falke. So when you observed her in 2023, the most recent time at the hospital, you would agree that you didn't observe any kind of hallucinations, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The only thing that you observed that would give any kind of concern was some pacing, correct?
Some pacing, some anxiety with answering questions. Yes, sir.
Okay. But that might be typical with any person even without mental health issues, correct?
Yes.
Especially after giving birth to a child, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you told her about the services, the WIC and the food stamps, would you agree that she was receptive to getting that set up?
Yes.
Okay. And as a social worker in a hospital, your job is part of your job to advise mothers and parents of services that might be available for people who don't necessarily have the resources to be able to do it on their own.
Yes.
Okay. And so that would be very typical to advise a mother of those kind of services.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you present when the child was removed from the hospital by Child Protective Services?
No, sir.
Okay. So this was before the removal, correct?
Yes, I met with her and then I made the report. And then after that, I didn't have any interaction with Miss Rivera.
Did Ms. Rivera indicate that she had some things set up in her home for the child?
She did. She said
Okay.
she had everything prepared except for a car seat.
Okay. And but she doesn't drive, so maybe she didn't think that she needed a car seat. Would that be kind of typical sometimes?
Well, that's what she said. Yeah, that's what she told me. She's like, I don't drive, so I didn't need it.
Okay. Pass the witness.
Ms. Meredith?
Ms. Blakey, did Ms. Rivera tell you how her rent is paid?
She did not.
Do you know how her rent is paid?
No, ma'am.
And did the father ever actually show up at the hospital?
I am not aware.
Okay, thank you. Pass the witness.
Mr. Manuel?
Thank you. Ms. Falke, during your first interaction with Ms. Rivera, you said she was in mental health crisis. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Was she placed in a protective order?
She was under an emergency detention order. And then with that, she was transferred to an like an inpatient facility up in Waco.
Okay. And are you aware if she got any help after that?
From my understanding, she
Objection,
actually,
that would be hearsay.
I just asked if she knew.
Okay, she answered, I think, you need to answer if you know, Ms. Falke. So he's simply asking you a yes or no question. Did you know?
no,
Okay. So in your second interaction with her, did you question her at all about that first time?
I did.
And did she tell you that whether or not she had gotten any additional help?
She did.
What did she tell you?
She told me that she was being seen by Scheib Mental Health Center, and her psychiatrist was Dr. John Houston.
Okay. Did she tell you how frequently she saw him?
No,
Okay. But you did say it seemed like a vast improvement between the first and second time, correct?
yes, sir.
After this second interaction, I mean, you said that you put a report in. Do you feel like in your experience, do you feel like she was capable of taking care of a child after this second interaction?
With the second interaction, with proper support from family, friends, resources, I believe it could be possible.
Okay. And what kind of support system do you think she would need to be able to do that?
I think first and foremost, she would need to continue to see a psychiatrist, make sure that she is maintaining her medication regimen. I think that's really important. An individual mental health could decompensate fairly quickly, especially with her diagnosis if she didn't continue that. I think that maybe having a good support system, she did mention she had a mom in the area, but her mom stayed in different motels. So maybe if she had a good relationship with them, maybe some family friends that could help her, I think that she could be successful.
Okay. Even knowing that she lives alone, you think that maybe just having those support systems in place and she could still live alone and raise her own child. Is that what you're saying?
It could be possible. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Anyone else have anything else for Ms. Falke?
Judge, I have just a little bit.
Okay.
Ms. Falke, you said that if somebody doesn't take their medicine, they could decompensate quickly.
Yes, sir.
If the support system that somebody was using was a couple of hours away, would that be useful, or do you mean she needs a support system far more local than a couple of hours away?
I think in Miss Rivera's case, she would need someone local, someone that could get to her 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. And that goes to the rapid decompensation you were talking about, potentially.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you think that support system would need to have some sort of a daily check-in?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And okay. All right. I believe that's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything else?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Falke. Ms. Falke, are you here under a subpoena?
Yes, ma'am.
You're released from your subpoena. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Your
You're
Honor.
free to go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Your next witness, Mr. Jett.
Yeah, Miss Nurse Conray. And Miss Conray, how are you employed?
I'm an RN through Christa Santa Rosa in San Marcos.
How long have you been doing that?
I've been a nurse for 2.5 years, and I've been at Christa San Marcos for 6 months.
Okay. All right. And did you have occasion during your work as a nurse at Christus Santa Rosa there to meet Evelyn Rivera?
I did.
How did you encounter her?
I took care of her as a triage patient a few times when she came in before she had the baby. And then I also took care of her postpartum before she or after she had the baby.
Okay. So during the time that she was in and you were her nurse when she had the baby, did you notice anything odd about her behavior during that time?
I personally felt like she was appropriate with the infant, taking care of it, changing diapers, feeding it when she was prompted to. Other than that, I didn't have any issues.
Did Ms. Rivera have to be prompted to feed the baby?
Yes, I did have to inform her that we needed to feed every 3 hours. And that was the only issue I ever saw with her and the baby was she couldn't remember the feed times for every 3 hours. Whenever I mentioned at 3 o'clock, we needed to feed at 6 o'clock, she couldn't remember that conversation later on when I asked.
Okay. Does that cause concerns for her ability to care for this child?
I think regarding her history with her first child and her mental health history, I think it could possibly be an issue.
Okay. You said that you had interacted with her some other times in a triage situation. How recently, or in relation in time to the time that she'd had the baby, when did you interact with her?
Before she had the baby?
Yes. Like how recent in time was that? I'm not asking that well.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. She had been there probably 10 times within the 2 months leading to before she had the baby.
Was she there for emergencies? Was she there for an emergency?
They always send us all of the pregnant patients. So anytime she came in and she wasn't feeling the baby move or she wasn't feeling good personally, she always came to the labor and delivery section so we could check her and the baby out.
Okay. So she came to you through the emergency department then?
Via EMS.
Okay. All right. Did you ever observe her in any of those times leading up to the birth to be in a mental health crisis?
I did not. I felt like she was appropriately asking to have her and her baby checked out because she wasn't feeling movement.
Okay. Now, 10 times seems like a lot of times in a couple of months leading up to a birth. Does that seem excessive to you as a nurse?
Personally, with my experience, but if I was to worry that something was wrong with my baby, I would probably have done the same thing to visit your hospital.
Okay. Do you know if Miss Rivera had a doctor, an OBGYN that was caring for her during this time?
Yes, she did use one of our OBGYNs to the hospital.
Okay. Were the issues she was experiencing those 10 or so times, could they have been handled by the regular doctor?
Objection calls for a conclusion that she's not competent to make.
Judge, she's a nurse.
Can you answer that question, Ms. Conry?
I can do my best.
Okay, no, I want you to know whether you can answer it or not.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm going to sustain the objection, Mr. McCormick.
Were the times that Ms. Rivera came in, these 10 times or so, did they rise to the level of an emergency?
It did become a question to us that was she visiting us because she needed medical help, or was it that she was alone at home and didn't feel comfortable or something like that?
Did that give you concerns about her ability to take care of this child?
Objection calls for a conclusion that she can't make based on that information.
I'm going to overrule it. Can you answer that question, Ms. Connery?
Yes, ma'am.
Go
I
ahead
don't
and
think-
answer.
Her visiting us would call into my question of whether she could take care of the child. But it did cause us some concern about why she always had to come to the hospital. It was always after a certain time, always kind of later in the night.
Thank you, Ms. Connery. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. McCormack?
Ms. Connery, you can't really say, though, whether she was coming in because she believed there was an emergency or not, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It could be that she felt the need to get some medical attention because there was something happening in the movement of the baby, correct?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, to speculation.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain that, Mr. McCormack.
So besides the issue with the timing of the feeding, everything you observed after the baby was appropriate, correct?
I do believe she was appropriate outside of the feedings.
Okay. And how much time did you spend with her at the hospital?
After she had the baby, I took care of her for 12 hours. Her and the baby for 12 hours.
Were you present when Child Protective Services did a removal?
I was not present. I was present when CPS first did their first evaluation with her.
Okay. No further questions.
Ms. Meredith?
Ms. Conray, you said that she would come later in the evening. Approximately what time would she come? How late?
It always seemed to be after 5 p.m. And then she would stay for a meal. We would watch the baby, give her IV fluids, whatever was appropriate at the time.
Okay, so it wasn't like midnight at night or anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Manuel?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Ms. Connery, in all of those other visits to the hospital, did you notice any other types of memory lapse?
No, sir. I always felt like she was very competent with her answers and the conversations with me.
Okay. And how frequently did that feeding issue with the memory lapse where you said you would have a conversation at 3, she couldn't remember at 6, how frequently did that happen?
It happened on 2 occasions. Earlier that morning when I first took over care with her and the infant, I fed the baby for her just to show her and have conversations about it. But our 3 o'clock feeding, I encouraged her to feed, and then I encouraged her to do our 6 o'clock feeding. And she had issues with remembering both of those times.
Okay. But you didn't notice it before the birth. So is this something that maybe, have you ever experienced this with anyone else in your experience after they give birth, that maybe they can't remember or think properly?
And it could be that it's just overwhelming and she wasn't able to just remember because so much was going on and she was exhausted, which is why I tried to encourage it on multiple occasions. And I also asked our night shift nurse that was coming in for me to help remind her and get her onto a schedule where she was consistently feeding the baby every 4 or every 3 hours without being prompted to.
Okay, so in your experience, does this happen frequently, infrequently with other mothers that just gave birth? I mean,
it happens occasionally. I wouldn't say it's a very frequent thing to happen, though.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Judge.
Judges,
Anyone else have any? Mr.
I do.
Jett?
I'm sorry. Yes, Your Honor, I did you. Ms. Connery, were you ever made aware of any security issues surrounding this child or this mother?
Once CPS came and they told us they had to inform.
Objection to the hearsay.
Okay.
I'll sustain that.
Okay. Did you discuss that with Ms. Rivera, the security issues with Ms. Rivera?
I did not, because it happened right at the end of my shift.
Okay. But you were aware of us, without saying what anybody told you, you were aware of a security issue.
Again,
Yes.
objection leading.
Overruled.
And did the security issues have to deal with the father of the child?
Yes, they did.
Okay. All right. You mentioned that you showed Ms. Rivera how to feed the baby. Did she seem like she didn't know how to feed the baby?
No, she was able to feed the infant. It's just habit of being a postpartum nurse to show them how to use our formula bottles, our nipples, using the cloths that we have to put under the babies in
I
case
see.
they spit up.
All right. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Judge.
Anyone
Just
else have anything else?
just one question.
Go
So
ahead.
it's clear, it's typical from your experience that going to the doctor's office after 5 o'clock is unlikely, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no further questions.
Anyone else?
No.
Ms. Conroy, you're here under a subpoena, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You're released from your subpoena. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
You're free to go.
Thank you, Ms. Conray.
Mr. Jett, do you have any more witnesses?
Ms. Rivera, Your Honor. And Ms. Rivera, you're the mother of the child that we're here talking about today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you also have another child. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your rights to your first child were, they haven't been terminated, but they've been limited. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ma'am, will you tell us, please, about your mental health diagnosis?
I've been through the hospital in and out for schizophrenia in the past. I do take medications for that, and I do make sure I go to my appointments to see my doctor, care coordinator, and another person. She was supposed to be witnessing today. Her name is Patricia. Forgot what her name is. I just wanted to say that I do take medications, and I am on top of that.
What medication do you take?
Sertraline, Abilify, and Aproprazole.
Okay. How long have you been on that medication regimen?
Let's see, how long have I been diagnosed with schizophrenia?
No, ma'am, you gave 3 specific medications that you take. And I'm calling that a medication regimen. Some people
Okay.
might call it a medication cocktail. And I'm asking you how long you've been on that particular set of medications.
I believe I want to say 7-8 years. Is that accurate?
Medications that you take, do you take them daily?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes. Including my prenatal. So that's part of.
You say you're taking a prenatal medication now as well?
Yes, for after pregnancy, vitamin.
Oh, a vitamin. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Was there a time when you took some medication by injection?
Yes.
When was that?
About want to mention about a month ago, I did have an injection. It's the Abilify.
Okay. And how long is the injection good for? When do you need the next one?
It is good for every 2 months.
Ma'am, do you ever miss taking your medication?
No.
What would happen if you missed taking your medication?
Well, in the past, it was difficult for me. So I did have maybe an anxiety feeling, or might start hearing audio hallucinations. But having those past experiences, I managed to stay on top of that today, because I did not like the experience of having those type of things in my life. I definitely want to keep up with my medications daily, and that's more important for me. And also my health.
You heard Ms. Falke testify earlier that she saw you a little over a year ago at the hospital. Do you recall that her testimony?
Yes.
Okay. And she said that you went to a mental health facility after that. Do you recall that?
No.
Have you ever been in a mental health facility?
Yes.
When was the most recent time?
Over a year and a half, I would say, maybe 2 years, the most, I think.
Okay. And so you disagree with Ms. Falke that it was in January of 2022?
Honestly, I don't remember exactly when was the last.
All right. That's fine, ma'am. Would you say that hospitalization or any of the hospitalizations would have been because you hadn't taken your medication?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Ms. Falke had said that you had told her in January of 2022 that it had been a few months since you'd had your medication by injection. Do you recall her saying that?
Judge, I'm going to object to the relevance of this. This is over a year ago.
I'm going to allow it, overruled.
Okay. Do you recall Ms. Falke saying that you told her that you'd missed some of your medication injections?
I don't recall. No.
Okay.
Ms. Rivera, he's asking you if you recall hearing the nurse say that you had told her you didn't take your injections. Do you recall the nurse just this morning making that statement?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I thought there was a miscommunication there, I thought.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Do you recall that may have been the situation that perhaps led you to that mental health crisis?
Yes. I believe.
Okay. If this child were returned to you, ma'am, and you had a mental health crisis, who would you lean on to help you?
I have more than a couple supporters. I do have my mom. I do have Melinda. I do have also my uncle, his wife. They recently just moved from out of state to Texas. And I can definitely reach out to them or seek advice, or, there's another option for support. I definitely call the crisis. That is my first step. And I don't purposely, go to the hospital or just to get seen and, not just
Object at this point is to non-responsive, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you. Where does your mom live, Ms. Rivera?
here in San Marcos.
Okay. Do you find her to be an appropriate person to care for your infant?
Yes.
Okay. Where does Melinda live?
Carnes City, I believe.
Carnes City, Texas? How do you know how long it takes to get from Carnes City to San Marcos?
Within an hour and a half.
Okay. You said your uncle and his wife moved to Texas recently. Where in Texas do they live?
I believe Juarez, Texas.
I'm not familiar with that, ma'am. Do you know what major city that's near?
No.
Now, I'm familiar with Juarez, Mexico, which is across the border from El Paso. Is that what we're talking about?
They just told me, I'm going by what I'm hearing, what ear. I don't know exactly. I apologize.
Okay. So you don't know where they live then?
No.
Do you recall again, you may have answered this, but let me ask it another way. Do you recall the last time you had a mental health crisis?
No.
When you were in the hospital after having given birth to this child, were you in contact with the father of the child?
No.
Not at all, never? When was the last time you had contact with him?
Over a few months ago. It was just in the past. I don't know exactly or what date, but over a few months, I would say.
Was it prior to the resolution of the prior case with Mateo?
No.
Were you familiar with the security situation that happened surrounding you and your child while you were in the hospital?
Yes.
What do you know about that?
With this child or my last child?
Let's start with this child.
No, I do not.
Okay. Were you familiar with the security situation that happened concerning your the older child?
Objection,
Yeah.
Rose.
Overruled. Did you say yes, Ms. Rivera?
Yes.
Thank you.
And what do you know about that situation, ma'am?
I will let the nurses know, please do not allow him to come see me or my son because of his background and his violence and our past history with domestic violence and everything else.
Did you let the nurses know about that when you were in the hospital giving birth to this child?
No.
Is Mr. Robledo a person that's appropriate to be around this child?
No. Mhm.
When did you finally determine, ma'am, that Mr. Robledo wasn't a good person to be around your children?
I believe the end of my last case with my son, around there, I was told that he would make false encounters about my son or about me and about my children, and he would, and I didn't want my daughter to be also going through another case and have her taken away, so.
I'm sorry, there's something you said there that I didn't quite catch. You said towards the end of the last case, you found out that he was what?
I found out that he was violent and he did not he would make false encounters about just about my son and about me and about the case, and it's like he would want on purpose to take away my child, and he has a lot of aggravation towards me because he wants to see his kids, but he just has a lot of aggravating feelings towards me, if that makes sense. So.
And did I understand you to just say that towards the end of the last case is when you found out he was violent?
I knew he was violent, but towards the last case, I put my foot down and say, this has got to stop, because it will really jeopardize a lot of things that I want to keep forward going with my kids, and my kids that come first. Yes.
Okay. I believe that's all I have now, Your Honor. I'd like to pass the witness.
Mr. McCormack?
So, Ms. Rivera, who is your support system in, I think it's Carnes City or Kennedy?
Yes, Melinda.
Okay. And how do you know her?
She is the foster parent of Mateo.
Your other child?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if she has indicated or have you had communication with her about being a support system for this child?
Yes.
Did you ever tell CPS about that?
Yes.
Okay. And so regarding this child during your pregnancy, you've heard testimony that you went to the hospital some 10 times, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Did you have a doctor who was treating you prenatal?
yes, my OBGYN.
Can I have you guys hold on for just a minute? I'll be right back with you.
Ms. Rivera, how often do you get to see that child?
Every 2 weeks.
Okay. And it's Ms. Torres who supervises that, correct? Does she supervise it? Melinda?
Yes.
Okay. Who is the caseworker that you deal with at Shine?
I believe she's my case coordinator, and her name is Patricia.
Okay. And how often do you visit with her?
About every 2 months.
Okay.
Or-
If you needed support, would she be someone that you could turn to for support?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know you live in San Marcos, but one of the questions I wanted to ask you, would it be possible for you to move to Carson City?
Yes.
Have you discussed that as a possibility if you were to have your child, so you would be close to Melinda?
Yes.
Okay. And because you receive financial assistance from the government, would it be possible for you to obtain housing there?
Yes.
Okay. Have you done anything to look into that as a possibility?
Yes.
What have you done?
I've applied online. I have called the offices, whichever is possible. I've been asking about the waiting list, and how many bedrooms, what are the requirements, sending emails. I really am a busy person, so I do, not just I'm on my feet all the time, but I do make phone calls, and it's very common in my life. So I just, that's what I've been doing so far. Yes.
Okay. And have you looked into getting WIC or food stamps?
It is definitely a consideration. I do definitely want to apply for WIC. I definitely have food stamps every month. I do get Social Security disability. And if there are any other resources, I would still consider it for my child and for myself and the household. And so.
So in the total amount of benefits that you receive per month, do you know how much that is?
For Social Security?
For Social Security and food stamps, I guess those are the two major ones, right?
Yes, I do. I know. Yes.
How much is it? For Social Security first?
Yes, Social Security I received from I believe $924 a month.
All right.
And,
Food stamps?
And food stamps I do receive around $117.
Okay.
Under my name. It's not considered. It's not with the child's name.
Okay. Now, is your housing paid for?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't pay any of that money towards housing, correct?
I'm sorry. Yes, I do pay. I do pay rent. Yes.
How much is that?
I believe. Let's see. It goes back and forth, so it's around between 140, 150. I do have the bill. I pay online. So that's why, I don't remember, but it's around that wage.
Okay. At the end of the month, after you receive your food stamps and your Social Security, is it cover all the expenses for yourself, or is there money left over?
It will be covered all expenses.
Okay. Now, have you done some things to prepare for the child if the child were to be returned to you?
Yes.
Okay. And have you taken some pictures in that regard?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, I'd like to be able to share those pictures.
Okay, give me just a moment. You should be able to now.
I want to show you what I've marked as respondents one. Is that something that you obtained for the baby?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that?
It's a little seed I say rocker or jumper. I don't know the exact name, but it has music, sounds, vibration, and it's for rocking the baby back and forward or just for that. Yes.
Now, did you have help to obtain this item? How did you determine that this would be appropriate for your child?
Some would be for donations, or I would purchase online, or I would ask around, or I have my ways too, so I need to
Okay.
I do ask.
Do you educate yourself by using the internet?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you what's Martha's response to. What is that?
Stroller has the double stroller, has the front seat and then the back seat. The back seat, what you can tell right now, is for the infant,
Mhm.
and then the front seat's for a toddler,
Okay.
and the blanket face in the front.
I'm going to show you what I marked as response 3. What is that?
I believe like a toddler meal chair.
Is that for feeding?
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to show you what's marked as respondents 4. Could you tell the court what that is?
A bassinet with a changing area and a playpen set all together. So it's like a 3-in-1 for a baby or a toddler.
And did you obtain that yourself?
Yes.
And all of these items are in your residence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Offer respondents 4. What is this picture?
Newborn diapers, boxes I ordered from HEB online, just so it's stored in the closet for preparation, just for I be sure that I know where I place them, the newborn diapers.
Okay. So you have bought newborn diapers, and obviously you know how to purchase diapers.
Yes.
Okay. We'd offer respondents 5. Now, tell the court what this is.
Closet, babies, clothes, onesies, pajamas, dresses, toy area. Let's see, there's books, there's diapers. You can tell there's a lot of equipment, a lot of things for the baby. So, yes.
Did you purchase these items? Did you obtain these items?
Some, and some are donations as well. Yes.
Who again donated these items?
I go to True Choice. It's a place where they do help with donations for babies and diapers and wipes and just anything that they might offer for your child.
Would that be a resource that you could use in the future?
Yes.
Okay. In other words, if there were other items you need to get, you could reach out to them.
Yes.
Okay. Offer respondent 6.
Any objections?
No
No
objection.
Tell the court what this is.
Donations, more clothes. I definitely folded the clothes. I have just buy sweaters, shirts, onesies, blankets. So far.
And this would be for the baby if the baby will return to you.
Yes.
Okay. And these are all items that are in your apartment.
Yes.
Okay. Offer respondent 7, I believe. And the last one. Now, you've done some research on birth control?
Yes. I have about over a month, I would say. I went to a women's clinic, and I did get the McClenahan for my arm. So I'd be sure I am on the safe side. And they have offered me, a bag of stuff for my protection and any other resources. I would look at the brochures, and I do have stuff in the closet stored. So for anything.
So these items that are listed in respondents 8 are basically information that you've read up on, and also some protective devices. But you've also gotten the actual shot.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Counsel's testifying.
I heard the testimony, Mr. McCormick. We need to move along.
All right. We'd offer respondents 8.
Any objection to 8?
No objection.
No objection.
Okay, so Ms. Rivera, you had mentioned an uncle and wife that they just moved to Texas. What are their names?
My uncle's name is Chewy.
Okay, and have you informed the investigator of those individuals that moved to Texas?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Have you also filed a protective order in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And it's something that, while we will not address today, you would ask the court to have a stay away order for the father to stay away from you, correct? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. What can you tell the judge to ensure the judge that the child will be safe with the potential monitoring that could be obtained through other people and the resources that you have?
I would continue on with my resources, contact anybody like my supporters. So far as you know, I know my mom, she's a support, and Melinda. I would contact my family as well, if anything. Definitely just stay away from ignorance, stay away from any other people who aren't capable of being around my daughter. And I definitely put my foot down and say I continue on just to with the resources.
Are you any relationships with any males?
Yes.
Okay, and who's that?
At the moment, we're kind of on and off.
Okay. Well, but you understand that if the court were to give you the child back, you would maybe need to not have the child around anyone except yourself and appropriate people.
Yes. Yes.
And how long have you been taking your medication for your mental health issues?
I do take them once every morning, and for as far as the injection, every 2 months.
Okay. Now, the other child that you had, you took care of that child until there were some issues with domestic violence.
Yes.
In other words, the issue was you and the father. That was the reason for the department's involvement.
Yes.
And how old was the child at that point?
Before he was a year old, he would be like 10 months. He was 10 months old.
Okay. Pass-Louise.
Ms. Meredith?
Briefly, Ms. Rivera, so is your rent being paid by Section 8? Housing? Is housing paying your rent?
Social Security.
No, Social Security doesn't pay rent. How does your rent get paid?
Through social SSI disability.
Ms. Meredith, I understood her to say that she pays anywhere from $140 to $150 a month for her rent out of her SSI.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how? Yeah. But I was wondering, I mean, rent is not that cheap. And how long is the waiting list in the town where the placement lives?
3 months.
3 months? Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Manuel?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Rivera, first of all, I'm just curious, when you had your mental health crisis about a year and a half ago, were you taking your meds or did you stop taking your meds for some reason?
I don't recall. I want to say it could be one or the other, but I think I think I might have stopped. I just stopped.
Okay. Because your testimony is that you've been on these same meds for about 8 years or so. Is it fair to say that in order for well, let me ask you this. Are there any indicators for you that you know about when you're starting to go into crisis? Like, when do you know to start calling for help?
I feel overwhelmed, have anxiety. More than likely sometimes depression, but that's not really, I don't see it as an issue, but just more of anxiety and overwhelming feelings. So.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You heard the testimony today that you would need to have a good support system in place in order for you to be able to raise your daughter, correct? So if you had a support system in place, I'm trying to figure out how would you know when you need to call somebody?
I honestly, I try to make sure that does not happen. I want to stay on top of it so it does not happen.
Okay. Is there, if you were to move, let's say, I mean, do you think would you be able to check in with your support system on a regular basis?
Yes.
How frequently?
It could be once every week or twice every week, or twice a month or less. I mean not less, but more often. I definitely want to check in.
Okay. I just want to follow up. You mentioned that there was some domestic violence between you and Mr. Robledo. Do you recall the last time that you've had any kind of incidents with him?
Not recent, no. This was in the past before this last case with my son ended. So.
Okay, and then I just want to follow up. Isn't it true that there was a stay away order issued in the last case in August to keep Mr. Robledo away from both yourself and the department? Do you recall that?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so you made a comment after that, I believe, at the hospital or sometime in this testimony that you were talking about that you had wanted to still be with Mr. Robledo. So I'm just trying to figure out, was that before or after the stay away order that you still wanted to work it out with Mr. Robledo?
Both before and after, but I do want to make sure I have this taken care of because this is for my daughter and this is for my health and for sake of our life. So I definitely want to keep Mr. Robledo out of our life for safety and
okay, so I get that. So let me ask you this. There was this previous stay away order was issued, but you still wanted to get back with him. So I guess what's going to be different in this situation if you get a new protective order keeping him away from you and your daughter? What's going to be different, and how are you going to keep him away at the same time that you're still wanting to work things out with him? Like, I guess I just don't understand that. Can you enlighten me?
Oh, no, I do not want any further contact with him first, and then my supporters are they're a big thing for me right now. So that's what's keeping me and Mr. Robledo, separate. And of course, I do not want him around my daughter. That makes sense.
Okay. So in the future, is it fair to say that you are not going to want to try to work things out with him like you had tried over the last year and a half?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Judge.
Go ahead.
We have another hearing at 11, Judge.
I know you do.
Oh, okay.
I'm on it too.
I didn't know if you'd forgotten.
I have not forgotten.
Yeah, Ms. Rivera, you said that you were in a relationship with someone. Who is that, please?
His name is Daniel.
And did you give his information to any of your caseworkers from the department?
Just his name.
Okay. Did you give him any other identifying information so that they could run a background check on him?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Just wanted to be sure if he is the right person I want to proceed a relationship with. So far, it's just been on and off. It's by the communication and by the distance where he lives and where I live. So it's not, it's just a distant relationship right now.
Where does he live?
Georgetown.
Okay. Where do you live, ma'am?
San Marcos.
Okay. Do you work, ma'am?
No.
Why not?
I received disability.
And what's the nature of your disability that keeps you from working?
Well, it's my mental health. So far, I know it's my mental health, schizophrenia.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything else? Mr. McCormick?
One question. If you move to Corn City, That's where Melinda Torres lives, right? Yes? Okay. So could she check on your situation daily if you did that?
Judge, I'm going to ask that that's speculation. I'm going to reject.
Well, I'll rephrase.
Okay.
Do you have a belief that she would be available to check on you on a daily basis?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
Mr. McCormick, you have any witnesses?
I do. Melinda Torres.
Okay.
Judge, I'd like to know when she gets here if she was watching on YouTube because the rule wasn't
I
broken.
think she may have been. Let's see if she was or not. Ms. Rivera, I've got a question for you. Do you have a car seat now?
Yes.
And how frequently do you believe a baby needs to be fed?
Every 3 hours.
Okay. Do you know what it means to feed on demand?
I don't know. No, I do not.
That's okay. When the baby demands to be fed, what do you suppose the baby will do to let you know the baby's hungry?
They would cry, they would make little noises, or sometimes you can tell by their mouth, not wanting to get to that point where they're over crying, or I read, especially
That's fine. You answered my question, Ms. Rivera. Thank you. Ms. Molina Torres, can you unmute your device? Ms. Meredith, do you have any witnesses you want to call?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Manuel, any witnesses you want to call?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone have any closing statements they want to make?
Sure, I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Manuel.
Judge, I think the testimony today was, it's good for Ms. Rivera in the aspect that we have some hope that she can create a support system. I guess my concern is the ad litem is that support system is not necessarily in place yet. This removal was signed literally the same day that the last case was closed. And in the last case, all of those concerns had not been alleviated. We were still working on them and we ran out of time. And that's why Ms. Rivera does not have all of her parental rights. That's why Mateo's not with her. Mr. Robledo did not alleviate any of those concerns, and he's still a prominent person in this picture. So my concern is while I want to congratulate Ms. Rivera for everything that she's done and getting prepared for a baby and all of that, my concern is just simply that I don't know that she has that support system in place yet. Not to say that she couldn't get it, but also that she needs to know, when she's calling people, what her indicators are, when she's going into crisis, those kinds of things. I think she just needs a little more help. And that's what scares me. That's my concern, is I just don't know that those are in place yet.
Thank you. It just occurred to me that if Ms. Molina Torres is watching on YouTube, she would know to unmute her device. So I don't think she's watching, but she's also not available to testify. Anyone else have a closing statement? Mr. Jett, I'm denying the department's request for TMC. And because I'm doing that, unfortunately, I don't have jurisdiction to hear a protective order. So Ms. Rivera, you're going to need to go up to the DA's office to seek a protective order. But I also believe that you have the wherewithal yourself to protect yourself and this child from that man. And I believe that you have the capacity to do that. I believe you have the capacity to care for your child, to know when your child is hungry. I'm very impressed by the steps you've taken to prepare your home for your child. I'm not holding what happened or didn't happen in Mateo's case against you, because this is a different case. This is a different situation. You're in a different mental state today than you were even when I signed this order. So it's going to be extremely important that you maintain contact with Ms. Molina Torres. It's going to be important that you continue to go to your mental health appointments, take your meds as prescribed, and then I should never see you again. Make good decisions about the men that are around you, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck. Thank you all. You're free to go, except for Mr. McCormick, Ms. Meredith, and Mr. Manuel, and I think Mr. Jett.